It's Mickey Mouse again, or the Chipmunks again. It's so funny. Dude, I actually can't even quite understand you, but it's really hilarious. Oh, man. Okay, well, I don't know what you do to fix it. It just sounds so funny. I think you have to go out and come back in again. Now you're not making any audio. It's back. Oh, shit. Okay. Oh, I'm glad this is for the record. Is your audio still the same? You're joining from another machine. Okay. Hey, there's the second Sam.
So testing. How's the voice on this one?
That's Sam. That's the Sam.
Okay, see, if I turn on the video here, I think I'm better exposed. So I'm going to use the audio here and the video here, if that works.
Great.
So if I'm sitting way over here, can you still hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I'll do that then.
Great. Awesome. Hi, Glenn.
Hello.
Were you here at the session where Sam was sounded like the Chipmunks for a little while?
Yeah, I remember that.
So that just happened. Anyway, he sorted it out, but it was hilarious.
Yeah.
I still don't know what that sounds like myself.
Yeah, it was really weird, almost like an alien voice or something. I remember Jazz Winder, he once came on and he had this voice. Yeah. Totally.
Okay, so I'm making people co-host right now. Okay. So I have another starting question. I'll wait till Miss Tamers gets back. How you doing, Glenn?
Yeah, hey, I'm doing good.
Right.
Yeah.
You have another starting question, did you say?
Yeah, well, let's check in first. How you guys doing?
Yeah, I went for a walk actually last night 3 o'clock at night, I went out in the woods, and it was really extraordinary actually. It's just because it was a little bit of light and dust. It's never the only time I've done that, to be in the woods in the middle of the night, and it was actually really, really awesome. I just looked out the window, and I hadn't come to bed yet. I thought, okay, I just want to go out and see how it is, and the birds were all in full orchestra, and it was really lively. So
Amazing.
that was one pretty cool experience yesterday.
So I should know this, but I don't. Where is the moon these days? Was it close to full moon? Not nearly? Where was that?
We're coming up to new, aren't we?
Are we?
I don't know. I mean, didn't even see the moon. It was almost like it was light. Or I mean, it was sunlight, just barely, because it doesn't really get dark right now.
Are you above the Arctic Circle in Oslo?
I don't think so. No, but it doesn't get totally dark. Like it gets almost, but not totally. So, yeah. Today I've just been taking it easy. Listened to a little bit of your talk with Josh actually.
Oh, thanks.
But yeah. Yeah, so that's me. Quiet day here.
Yeah, I think we're just a few days away from new moon. I was looking. Yeah, it's gorgeous. I woke up early this morning, and like 5, wide awake. And I had to hang out with Harry, so that was awesome. And today is an open day. I wasn't sure I was going to make it, actually. I had a nap, so you're seeing me just, yeah, my peepers have just opened again.
Well, thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Nice to be here.
I just got back 2 nights ago from Philadelphia, where I spent about 3 days. Really, really jam-packed days. And today I'm going to have some visitors come by, actually one visitor come by and take a look at the puppies. This is the first serious, it's a friend of my son's, and he was the first serious person to say, I want a puppy, I want a puppy. So he's going to come up and pick out a puppy today.
He wants a boy, right?
He wants a girl.
Oh, he does. Cool.
Yeah, there's this myth that girl puppies are smarter than boy puppies. I don't know where that I think it might have something to do with humans. I don't know. But yeah, so he's going to be here at about 4 o'clock, and it's about 1 o'clock, so he'll be here in 3 hours. That'll be fun.
Awesome.
Yeah. Anyway, it's strange going from one end of the spectrum, which is, as Doug puts it, full-on industrial freight, get it done, type A, profit-oriented, detail-oriented, project management-oriented, to these kind of conversations, which is very visionary, very future-looking, very emergent, very co-creative. It feels different, you know? And so I'm trying to, as hard as I can, to bring the two together, but there's still kind of this polarity that I'm living, and I feel like I'm living it right now.
How does it feel different? Go a bit more into that, Sam.
Well, you know, if I'm actually doing something for the day gig, it feels like I'm always looking for opportunities to do the co-creation, being with, getting underneath the superfluous, super shallow aspect of things. And some people won't pick up on that. You know, some people are just very, okay, get this done, get the next thing done, on to the next point, on to the next point. So Some people are very content focused, so it's not easy to get beyond that into the relationship stuff and into the future stuff. Anyway, I'm trying to develop my skill set there.
Do you mean in our space, or do you mean in the GCC space?
No, I mean, as I'm working my day gig, you know, when I'm trying to go beyond the list of things done and move on and prioritize this and do that and, you know, get this done by 5 o'clock and get this done by 3 o'clock. Beyond that to, hey, you know, getting to know people, getting to feel that we're in kind of partnership, getting to go underneath the superficial. And it's good with some, and it's very difficult with others, I'm noticing. It's almost a difference here, the opposite difference, where here we're so much into co-creation, emergent, whatever, and it's hard to get to, okay, let's get A done, let's get B done, let's get C done. It's kind of interesting, the dynamic there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a book I read some. It's called Getting Things Done. So
yes.
Maybe I should take a look at that again. Yeah.
There's somebody in this group that talks a lot about that. I forget exactly who it was.
I saw a couple of interviews with that guy, David Allen. It's really inspiring guy, actually. I think he's got some good ideas. I mean, that is a kind of productivity which isn't set to a specific time frame. I guess it's maybe a method that could be maybe utilized also in more flexible projects where.
I remember who it is. I think it's Carl. Carl Hebenstreit talks about GTD.
Yeah, I think he mentioned that. Yeah, I briefly remember.
Yeah.
It came up. So.
Sorry, I cut you off, Glenn. I apologize.
No, go ahead.
You know, maybe it's that little tension I was feeling between, you know, the work week and then the weekend, and that little tension there between getting things done versus, you know, co-creating and being with, that prompted me to at least be thinking a lot about this next question, which I'm about to ask, which is, from each of you, and I mean not just Glenn and Tammy, but anybody who's actually viewing this video later, what do I need to do? What is it that I said I was going to do that I forgot and I dropped? Or what is it that I could do to help you feel that this was moving forward in some way? Or what is it that I committed to you and I haven't done yet? Or what is it that you think we can do together so that we can actually get to know each other better? That was my opening question, is what do I need to do? Tell me what to do.
Oh, so now you want to be told what to do, Sam?
Don't read too much into that, Tammy. But yes, go ahead and read as much as you like into that, but no more, okay?
Well, I mean, what I'm actually getting at, Sam, is that it's way more comfortable to be told what to do in many ways. Like, I think that's part of the tension of collaboration, is that you have to kind of bring what you have and try and do what you think needs to be done in right timing, but it's a many-legged race. And so I guess my question is, how do we do that for each other? Like, it's because it's obviously not just you.
Well, that's a good way of telling me what to do. And I wanted to respond a little bit by also saying I do have lists of things and activities that are proceeding. And I know that I've tried to kind of bring that forward. But I'm also sensitive to the fact that if I do that too much, people feel that it's ramming down my agenda on people's, maybe not quite so extreme. So I'm trying to be a little bit, which is to be very receptive and invite what other people think needs to get done. In other words, you know, it's not so much about me. Tell me what you're about.
Okay. Here's what I think, Sam. I think that we could. One thing that would feel a natural involvement is to set a course of action and some specific meetings that are pulling in specific people around specific topics in terms of the build.
Okay, so if that were the case, I have probably a dozen such topics already. And that's what I'm trying to balance, is that if I set those topics, it feels a lot like I'm driving the agenda. So perhaps we could go into co-creating what those conversations could be. Tammy, you're on mute.
Sorry, I don't like to smoke on camera, and I'm smoking. Yes, I think so. And I mean, Rama's latest piece where she wants to play on Zoom is an interesting frame to watch from that end. I suggested to kind of co-think into what the sessions would be about, and she's jumped on that, and so she's put that out to the group. So I wonder if it's like, okay, let's put out some things that we really want to do and invite people to add to that list. And then maybe some dialogue on Facebook so that we're like informing the sessions in writing before we come. And then asking who might want to be at that meeting and who, like, what are the skills, things that would be really helpful to have from our cohort of people to make those conversations really full, so that in that moment we're together, we can be informed by, people that are expert in those things. And because it really is about, it's about bringing our intelligence together in constellations that make sense, and being conscious of that as we kind of design the process, if that makes sense.
To me, that makes a lot of sense. It also feels a lot like the way business works today.
Why? In what way?
We set agendas, we invite people, we invite who we think ought to be there. We set a certain time frame for it. So, I mean, I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying it's reminiscent of a lot of processes which have already been learned and are already in practice, independent of this movement towards this new future. That's what it feels like to me.
Well, I think that we're bridging between the old world and the new world.
Yep, there we go. I vehemently agree with that. So I think what this points out to me is tossing out the baby with the bathwater may be a bit too strong. In other words, there's value in current practices that we have to examine carefully before they're tossed. And yet, there's also harm in current practices and procedures that, if unconsciously adopted, will continue to harm. And that's the part that requires some judgment and reflection.
What kind of harm are you thinking about?
Okay, so let's take a very small example. Okay, in traditional meetings, we have an agenda. An agenda item might be, okay, we're going to talk about this for 10 minutes. And after 10 minutes, if the topic has not been fully discussed yet, you got to go through this rigmarole of, are we going to table it? Are we going to wait till next week? Are we going to add 5 more minutes to this? Are we going to take 5 minutes away from some other who gets to speak, who doesn't get to speak? Or do we just make a decision with what has been discussed? To me, that doesn't come up with optimal co-creative strategy, and yet some of those practices are already in place in industry today.
Well, I think that putting a time on something, that would be like, for me, immediately I'm like, well, that's not our culture. Our culture is to speak until the information is complete and understanding is met. And, so I think that we already have that kind of social agreements together, is to really, well, I mean, that's my sense.
I mean, we haven't explicitly said that. We've been behaving like that, but we haven't actually said we're going to allow topics to live so long as they're, in people's consciousness and require expression. but we haven't really formally kind of said, oh, well, we're going to cut off this topic at a certain time because we all have lives to live and we have to move forward.
Yeah, I guess I just think that you know, I feel I'm walking into this knowing that there's a richness and complexity that needs to be understood before we can move forward. And I think that there's a lot of, you know, we're kind of going with our felt senses, and yeah, I think that we're feeling our way into what we're doing, and that I just don't see us adopting full scale the industrial framework in what we do, not only because none of us, to my mind, really resonate with that, but also Doug's around.
Yeah, well, the second point,
and he'll bounce right off, and that would be a big loss.
Right, but here's the thing. That's why I'm trying to say it requires some judgment about what to retain and what not to retain, rather than this throwing the old system out completely and trying to recreate from scratch a new system. Is that there's this bridging, as you say, that needs to be done. And even if we wanted to totally recreate a new system from scratch, as of now, when we say we want to, we don't live in that system. We still live in some remnants of the old system, quote unquote. So we still have to operate, we still have to live, we still have to eat, we still have to be able to transport each other. They're all parts of, quote unquote, the existing infrastructure that either we deal with and we account for and we take means to deal with, because none of us live in this ideal new future yet. So it doesn't exist, so we can't actually operate as if it does. So to put it out completely and say, well, I'm not going to have any of that. I mean, it's one way to live, but I don't think it's what everyone who is in this movement would choose to do. And it's not somewhat practical. It needs to be acknowledged that we're always going from an old world to a new world. And as we move forward, there's always the old world and the new world. And a year from now, what we think of as the new world is going to be the old world 2 years from now. So we're always in this tension. Over.
Is there something here about like if we're in the old world or we're in the present world, and we have a vision of a different way, and then a formulation of the vision can be an activity in the old world, so to say, which is important as such. So that's one of the things that come to mind. Would it be useful to try to formulate more clearly the vision for the alternative system? For example, that is one direction which could be interesting to explore. Could be a topic for one Zoom call or several, Facebook thread, etc. We've had a couple of talks, we've gone into it, and that's a sort of issue, like when we're in the so-called old world, or whatever you want to call it, the present situation. And I mean, is that something which is a priority to formulate as clearly, as convincingly as possible? What kind of place we want to get to? And the reason I say it is because for me, I have a pretty clear vision of where I want to get to, in some sense at least. For example, I have a very clear vision of where I want to get to is one process which combines many things at the same time, and where the technological things or the administrative things can be automatized and be in the background, and where I can be in the natural state and talk with you and others, and somehow from that natural movement there arises valuable items which can then enter the process later on, etc. But then again, you're into sort of this yeah, I mean, this whole vision of the dynamic knowledge repository and metacognition, machine works, super system, whatever you want to call it. So that is in the future, so to say, but the vision of it, the formulation of the vision of it is something that can be done now and might be relevant. Then there's so that's one thing that comes to mind. Like, is that a direction we want to go to formulate more clearly? Yeah, Tam?
So I'll be, I hope, bringing up a topic which I hope we discuss, and that is, in my view, it's important for each of us to describe what that vision is. In my view, it's not very important for us to all agree. I would like for each of us to write that down and share it and discuss it, but I don't think we need to put a priority on us all agreeing on it for now. Because driving that towards agreement, we've tried. We can waste hours, weeks, months on that. And it's because we haven't gotten to know each other. And so simple little things like your words could imply that we're in a disagreement, but we're really not. Or things that look like agreement, because of the different nuances and associations of those, could mislead us into thinking that we are in agreement. So I think it's important for us to have it, to share it, but not drive it towards agreement yet. That's my personal position right now.
Yeah, and I think it might be interesting to kind of have some kind of, I don't know, fun way, game way to be able to be like, okay, well, these are the simultaneous truths that we need to hold together. They're not big T truths, but each of us has a slightly different way of knowing and being. So if we can hold that together, I think that's a good facility for us to be able to kind of stretch beyond what we think we know.
So here's a possible way to play the game. Suppose we think of little phrases, little things that sound like values to each of us, whether it's transparency, whether it's fairness, whether it's universal love, whether it's anti-fragility, whether it's sustainability, okay? We take these and we try to figure out what are each of ours, I'm talking for myself now, what would be my top 10? What would be my top 5? What would be my top 3? It'd be interesting because I think, if we could consider 100 or 150 or whatever, we probably all agree, yeah, these are all important. But where we personally feel an emphasis, I think, is probably where we have some individuation, which is not necessarily bad, but I'm just trying to figure out whether that's a way for us to get to know each other. I'll throw out for myself, okay? For me, one of my top ones is coexistence. I wouldn't put love at the top. I would put coexistence at the top. And I know that's somewhat controversial.
Why?
Because love seems like it's always accepted as the answer to everything, whereas I don't think so. I mean, there's a version of it that can be, but love is so ill-defined that I would prefer to use this term coexistence for now.
But do you mean a similar thing?
Yeah, I think that in order to coexist, one has to love each other enough to say, okay, that person is a person who I need to respect in this space that I am living in. And that level of love and respect and tolerance obviously is not universal. So yes, love is in there, but more important than whether you feel that love is that you practice that coexistence.
Coexistence, that's interesting. I mean, that totally relates to everything. Coexistence inside my brain's coexistence with the blood, with the nervous system, with the food. I'm coexisting with my neighbors, everyone around. That has multiple levels of meaning.
And in particular, coexistence with people who disagree with you and coexistence with other ideas, values.
I think that's the most important thing for us to stretch. I'll just say that.
Say more, please.
Well, I mean, if you look at what's happened here at GCC, there's this huge constellation of amazing human beings that have many ideas that correlate, interrelate, are as a bomb or an effort to solve some of some similar problems, right? Many different perspectives, of course, because we're global challenges. That's kind of everything. So there's no real differentiation between the silos of challenge that exist necessarily. So anybody will come to our group and be like, yes, we got some global challenges and I want to put my oar in. Because it's so open, I think it requires us to be open to all comers. And that means that we need to practice the ability to hold many different perspectives at the same time. And especially where they're similar, like between Sam's work, my work, and Doug's work in terms of building new system. You know, that's part of why I wanted to meet with the three of us so that we could get down to how we can actually more consciously and take it to action. What does it look like to mix the CMM with the identity wallet idea that I have? And and how does that work with Time Browser and with, many of the other things that you've got going on, Sam?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really curious about how we can hold space for each other, especially, hi Alex, especially in those little places where there's tension, because we're really attached to all the work that we've done to and really thought about these specific things that kind of rub up to each other in our work. And I've just noticed some tensions and bouncing off, even between you and I, Sam. But I widen the circle to Doug because he brings such a powerful piece too, and from the beginning has a huge contribution to me. So, my idea was to start with, us three and see how can we kind of get our shit together.
I'm collecting mine right now.
Great.
Hey, welcome, Alex. So I would also venture another small thought, which is coexistence means healthy coexistence. Okay, I'm not necessarily just saying that that's assumed, but healthy coexistence to me implies limits. There are limits to growth. I'll even invoke that term from 1968. Okay, and to recognize that there are limits to growth, and that growth cannot continue forever, either as an individual or as a species, I think is important. I think it's not a meme that's widely reflected in common economics or business practices, or even, it has limitations in practice everywhere. So to understand what a healthy coexistence means, needs to accommodate and recognize other entities. So there's subtle second and third and fourth order effects here. Over.
One little thing which might be worth mentioning is in the vision that I have of the future system, and this is something that I've noticed in most of the visions I've come across, there's this idea of something which is tailored to each specific person for their situation, so that your vision for the future and their vision for the future, that will all be included in the larger vision for the future. So that there's this idea of having a system that will actually accommodate all of the specific wishes of each person. So it's one large system, but it's many subsystems, each of which are different, and they're being created continuously by each person. And that theme seems to be fundamental in all of the major ideas which go around. And there isn't really any way out of it, I guess. There's another concept similar to that, which you could call polytopia. So it's like utopia, but it's adapted to each person's unique situation, their life circumstance. So it's something that is inherently flexible and inherently capable of changing. So this quality, you can see it in every single vision statement, and certainly around the global systems, this idea keeps coming up. But I've noticed that it keeps coming up also in all kinds of organizations, and it's a classical idea, but the problem is that it's not always fulfilled in practice. It's been considered difficult to actually tailor it, personalize it, to include that individual freedom and autonomy. So that's, I mean, yeah, that seems worth mentioning, at least, that's a common theme. That there's something flexible which adapts to each person, and each person can create their own version of it, so to say. So it's not really what we're used to thinking about as a system. It's not a one size fits all thing, and that's also in Doug's ideas. It's about getting the data which is relevant for just this situation, for just me, just here, etc., etc., etc. So it has to be really personalized. And another way to look at that is also that if each of us describe our vision for the system we want to get to, and if each of us can manage to formulate it really clearly in a way we're happy with ourselves, then per definition that would have to be included in the larger super system, to the degree that it's practically possible, of course. Yeah. And that just seems an interesting point to keep in mind too.
So are we distinguishing between what people need individually or what people want individually?
What they want can change, right?
What I want could also be excessive. If I want primary every night, that could be excessive. Is someone going to tell me I can't do that? Is the world going to tell me I can't do that? Well, I need to grow up myself and realize that's not good for the world.
There has to be a limitation to resources, at least.
Well, there is a natural limitation to resources. And
Yes.
that's part of what forms any kind of, the reality is informed by, especially the time and attention part, right? I mean, we've all chosen to set aside this time and come here together. Someone may have to go at some point because, you know, something's come up for them. And that, I think that kind of natural ebb and flow of energy and you know, reality, I think that needs to be kind of part of how we build this.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with everything you said, but I still think there's this tension between needs and wants. How we recognize that and how we say yes as much as possible while responsibly also saying no as much as needed.
Sam, do you think, I just wonder, Sam, do you think that tension can be sort of solved in this framework of small groups who really try to figure out what they want, what does being good mean to me, and this process which really tries to inform us about what we really need, and maybe that will bring the want and the need a little closer, I guess, in this, because that seems to be a big part of the journey, right? To
Yes.
really figure out what do I really want and what do I really need.
So I apologize for shaking my head early. I think that I do believe that what you just described in these practices, I think is a step towards that. I thought you were going to say something else, and so that's why I prejudicially reacted.
Oh, you made an assumption, Sam.
I made an assumption, yes, and I apologize for that, and I was showing yet another imperfection of mine, so thanks for catching that.
Imagine what you could have if you had the regional groups from all around the world with the rich tapestry of culture that comes from the different regions, all developing their own custom design platform, not platform, but custom design group as part of the global fabric that was looking for a new kind of leader. Because when groups grow like that, the leaders that emerge tend to emerge quite naturally. So at the ground level, if you can do something at the ground level to foster the emergence of a different kind of leader, you'll have something happening, I think, perhaps.
Alex, I would like to, because I've tried going into Viscope and I've tried to understand what it is to create a region in the platform. I've tried to even figure out how it is that my thing that I create plugs into your thing. I've tried to read the documentation and I can't figure it out yet. So I was wondering if it might be useful to have a one-on-one later for you to guide me through that or navigate me through that.
Yeah.
I've been sending questions from a couple of months ago, and I got to admit, I'm kind of dense. I don't quite get it yet. I don't know how to play in that infrastructure.
The difficulty that I've had explaining it is due partly to the fact that there's nothing in the past that I can reference which is vaguely similar, apart from a Ponzi scheme. And I don't want to go down that route because although it resembles a Ponzi scheme, it's not in law. It's only a community group. It's a community group recruiting friends. It's nothing to do with a Ponzi scheme. But it'll work the same way when it starts growing, and that's it's because of the segment, the 3-person triad segment venture that has spokes coming out from it, growing like a cell. Organic cell division results in exponential growth, and that's how we train our team members to operate. That's how That's how I would train my 2 friends, because I only need to add 2 friends to my segment, and we've got a successful segment operating. They're trained to do the same, and that's how the fabric spreads like an organism, like a bacteria growing in a dish. It's organic, natural growth. You can't beat nature's design.
What I don't quite understand, Alex, is what the 3 people would be doing, right? So, and I guess my first question is, do you have an initial triad that's locked and doing things with you in it? That would help me to understand.
I've got a neighbour here that lives in the same block of units, and he's developing a P2TP CANS website, p2tp.cans.org.
And what's the purpose of that website?
It's a page, just a page for his segment. But the pages that I'd like people to create, if they're entrepreneurs, are district nodes, because with a district node you'll have the URL of a district node that has lots of segments in that district, all reference to that area because they're geographically in the same place on the planet. So it's a very regionalised group of villages, and there's no centralised base. It's distributed natural organisms developing. The strange thing about it is that if it starts in different places all around the world, it could grow quite massively and rapidly. But it would take a long time to get going. Most of these things start very slowly, and it'll take some talent to get the design right, because it's got to attract onboarding from entrepreneurial type of web developers that want another asset, like a URL, if they think that URL is going to increase in value over time. So some of them do, some of them don't. If you've got advertising space and an agreement with Google and Amazon, you can get ads funneled into your page, but if you haven't got content to attract people, then you're not going to get the clicks, and it's not going to make money. It's probably going to cost you money. So that's why it's better to have a community group doing their own thing. Each community group that's doing the Bioscope thing will have its own page, its own group, and they'll design it the way they like it. The only stipulation that I would put there is that they follow the suggested 12 traditions. They're not steps, not like an AA recovery group. It's just what I've done is I've taken the 12 traditions from Alcoholics Anonymous and modified them to come up with my own version suitable to prevent corporate interests trying to weasel their way into the organisation and overvote the committees in the various regions that are planning their own websites and all that sort of thing. It gets a bit deeper when it comes to things in the traditions. Some people don't agree, but I like democracy, and if I think democracy is with like a sliding scale between 1 and 99%, 100%, you've got the slider in the centre at the 50% line. So if you've got half and half, 50% voting either way, you've got a neck and neck finish. So the slider's got to move to 49 or 51, and one side wins. But I'd like to move that slider right up to 75, because then you've got much more likelihood that the majority of the group want to move in that direction. See what happened in America with Trump. Trump won the election. That's twice it's happened now. The president's won the election, but somebody else got the majority of the vote. Anyway, that's it. Groups have to grow fairly large in order to have an influence on local policy, the direction of local policy. And groups that have large numbers in their midst to get counted, because politicians are counting them when there's a tight election coming up, and we could get better people moving into politics even. The emerging transformation of spirituality in the community and technology, especially among the young. A lot more young people getting into meditation, moving away from the ice scene and the dangerous chemicals scene. There's a lot more church groups coming out with anti-suicide campaigns for young people that are getting into trouble that way, and giving them opportunities to get involved with this community. Wherever there's an opportunity, I reckon that's a good idea.
So, Alex, here's what I would like to suggest. Could we do a one-on-one where I really ask you some questions so that I can understand it, and I can understand how I can operate on this platform and what it means to use that platform to further any part of GCC or my own personal interests? Because I think I've looked through the examples and the pages that exist. I can't quite grok it yet. How long do you think that session ought to be?
How long do you think it would meet for? Half an hour? How much time have you got available?
Could we start with an hour?
Yeah.
Could we do it on Monday?
Yep. Any day is fine.
What time zone are you in?
Tomorrow.
Pacific, West Pacific, Australia, Sydney time. It's Sydney or Brisbane. East coast of Australia is all the same time as Sydney and Brisbane.
Okay. So I'll try and propose the time on Monday. Probably late evening my time, but sometime during the day your time. Because I think it'd be good. Because I don't know, have there been people in GCC that have successfully adopted Viscope?
No. It's only a concept. Well, it's only a concept, but I've been treating it like it's a done deal, because it's like a vision. I've got to think, that'll work. Let's get everyone involved in that, and I'm trying to carry it along as if it's already happening.
Yeah, see, I don't even know that. I don't even know if I can actually go someplace and create something that actually is on Viscope or works with Viscope. I don't even know that much.
Yeah, well, that's what I'll talk to you about.
All right, I'll propose a time on Monday, okay, Alex?
See, I've got our members who read it and understand it will see an opportunity there to grab a URL for their own district. If they do, it'll start growing. And the condition they have to oblige to are in the How It Works page.
Okay.
It needs a lot of work.
Well, one of the things that I think is interesting is that your project has some of the similar challenges as the GCC project, as in like really articulated, partly built. Not that we're necessarily partly built, but we're using some practices that we've agreed on. And it's not 100% clear to people what the heck is going on.
Yeah. Well, Sam, if you drop me a link before that meeting and an hour beforehand or something, because I've got a calendar on Google, but I've also got a short-term memory problem.
I'm not sure I have your email, but I'll send it to you on Facebook Messenger, and I'll propose the time there, okay?
I'll keep an eye out for it.
I'll probably send it soon after this call.
All right, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Thanks, Alex.
So just one little remark, like if there's a wish to influence, for example, direction of politics, it's I mean, it seems like one important part of it is the development of ideas and formulation of ideas. I guess that's a little bit how I see the process at the moment. That it's a generative process out of which there are insights coming, and possibly clearer formulations of the insights. So that's that's one part of it. Then there's the personal development of us in the process, the relationships that we develop, and just the media artifacts. So it's many things at the same time. But I would at least this is the way where I see it, is that that there's a knowledge, I would suppose, which will grow from this sort of vision of design or a system or a way of being, and a way of formulating it, a way of expressing it. So it's a new kind of knowledge which we're growing. And if that knowledge can, grow strong enough, so to say, then I would expect that to just naturally flow into culture in all kinds of invisible ways and influence the political priorities, as well as the, what business opportunities could work, and where people could, like one of the things which seems worth going for is if there can be a business model where you can make money, make a good living, at least, by just doing something good in a sustainable way. And so, but then we're into ideas again. I mean, we're into designs, we're into systems. So I guess it's a question how specific you want to get, like, because I have some really specific ideas about it, and I know all of you have. And when you talk about this, Alex, I mean, it reminds me a little bit about my ideas too, even though it's still a little unclear. When you mention districts, for example, I don't really know what that means, but I feel the basic pattern of the system you're describing. It feels very similar to my ideas and those I've heard. And it's a strange thing, because sometimes when I'm trying to formulate it myself, it seems totally simple and clear, and other times I don't even know what it is. So it's a strange thing. But I guess it may have something to do with, like you say, that it's new, right? We don't have any memory reference to associate it with. So, but in any case, I mean, to keep something specific, I mean, there's the knowledge, there's certain ideas and designs which hopefully develop and become, clearer in our minds, and then this process can make us formulate those in a way which is comprehensible also for others. And so what's the next step? Yeah, what do I need to do? It's a good question. I mean, there's many ways to go about it. Maybe we will want to share some more specific ideas. I mean, one way of doing it, we could do it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's many ways we could go.
I wonder, or everyone really, I wonder if we can have a format that relates to how something might be built, so that we can kind of have a way to be able to harvest the ideas. Like what comes to mind, it's the kind of fully formed thing is, there's building apps on Holo. If we were to our projects within that, ideas, then we would have similar buckets of information and how we people, like what would it do, and what would be the functional use of it. It would answer those questions, as well as being able to kind of start to do a map of the different pieces that we all want to bring to the table.
See, I like that question. So I'm going to plug that question with something else I said earlier about the fact that we each have our own vision of what it is that GCC is. I think that it would be interesting to consider a different format for this particular call in the following way. That we treat each other as barn builders, but we're each building our own barn. So we come here to say, here's what I'm doing this week. Here's where I expect to get to next week. Here's where I could use some help. Here's maybe my skill set. Here's where I could help someone else. And look to each other to say, hey, that's pretty cool. I like what you're doing. Oh, somebody says, oh, I like what Tammy's doing. Let me go and help Tammy. And in this way, in a loose format, find opportunities to connect rather than assume that there's one thing we're building and then we're all struggling to try and define that. We each have pretty clear ideas about what you each want to build. So why don't we take forward progress each week on that individually and then seek those opportunities to connect? Over.
Yeah, that sounds.
I like it. I like it, Sam.
Yeah, because then at least we got somewhere to begin, right? Yeah.
I can't see any reason why a group of separate people, all with different projects, can't intertwine them and link them all together like the global weavers. They're weaving a global fabric anyway.
Yes. That's what
and I think it will happen, but I think individually, if we each progress our pieces, that's what we expect to happen, right?
Yeah, I think we got to formulate it clearly, each of us, in our own way, and then maybe work on that for a while, and maybe it turns out that all those formulations go very much the same way. Well, like I would suspect it to do, but you got to begin somewhere. I guess it reminds me, like you mentioned, Sam, like this question, has there been any collective which has figured out more brilliant ideas than any single genius, right? And this guy made this claim that it's always been the best formulation from the single genius. There was something like that. Then again, of course, the single genius is also informed by friends and influences. But there's really, I think there's something important in formulating it for yourself in your own way, in your own thoughts, and trying to find a strong, clear formulation of your idea, which you really understand yourself and makes sense to others, and work on that. And that's a good project to do together, because then we can, share it and give feedback, and it's a way to really understand our own ideas. So, yeah, just each build our own barn, and then the totality of all those barns, that's the collective barn. Just like the confederational purpose idea, it's the same thing.
An ever-growing global fabric of barn.
Yeah. The deep listeners collaboration.
Yeah, I think what that brings is, I think it diffuses the tension we come to every week by saying, oh, geez, is this going to be this again? Or is it going to be revisiting that again? It's revisiting what we each bring. We're finding those opportunities to resonate. And where there's energy, bingo, let's take advantage of that. And eventually, I do have faith that all of this is going to converge. And I think that's just the kind of community we are. But I think let's let that emerge rather than trying to force that right away.
Okay, so the lovely little container that can hold that is what exactly? A few suggested pieces to hit in a call? Like, do we do a couple of rounds of what are you
I think
going?
the container is this. I think that if I put forth what I believe the vision is that I'm trying to create or what the GCC is, and you do the same, and Glenn does the same, and Alex does the same, and Doug does the same, and Harry does the same, and Anna does the same, then something will emerge out of that. Okay? But in the meantime, I'm working towards my own statement of that. You're working towards your statement of that. And if we have a one-on-one and say, well, if I just modify my statement this way, you modify yours slightly, bingo, we plug together. We find a way to do that together. If I do the same thing with Doug, if I do the same thing with Anna, if I do the same thing with Harry, that will begin aggregating our collective effort. That's what I'm thinking.
How does that relate to the communication and commitment to collaborate? Is it a simplified version of that?
No, I think to me that's already simplified. So I think that we find opportunities to collaborate, and then we create CCCs around those opportunities. That would be how I would proceed. By the way, I just had a conversation with Josh today where the next exploration area with Josh would be CCCs.
Awesome.
He and I did one on COI today.
I saw it posted. That's fantastic. Thanks for doing that part of the practice.
Yeah, thanks for seeing it. I went ahead and checked it out about half an hour ago. I was surprised it already had 9 views. That's awesome.
Good work.
Well, that can be one commitment to collaborate, that we try to formulate clearly our own version of the big vision as we see it. And if we commit to that project, that seems like one specific thing worth committing to. Because I also feel that inside I really should try to formulate more clearly this that's inside, and just sharing that with you would be really beneficial for that process. And maybe you need to go through it many times, but that's then things at least move forward.
Yeah. And oh, by the way, this forum then becomes a way where your work can be heard, can be appreciated, can be seen, can be understood by giving updates, me giving updates every week. This is where I am. This is my next step. This is where you are. This is your next step.
Exactly.
I'm seemingly optimistic about this consideration of format for this particular course.
I agree. I think it's a good evolution. But you know that already because I've been kvetching.
Well, you kvetch about a lot of things, so I'm not sure exactly how I know. As do I, okay?
But one other thing is, what about the written format? Could that be interesting to also include in this?
Wait, what format?
The simple format of writing in a very simple, let's call it essay form, or something for a Facebook post or Medium post or anything, to work on this continuously. If that could be something worth pursuing, and that would go together with this, right? Because if I have something written, I could, for example, use that as a way to speak. Then speaking can inform perhaps adjustments and improvements in the written format. And I might want to have several written formats. And that's a whole thing in itself, by the way, for the Facebook group, which is one of many ideas that I have, which I would like to try someday, just to use the Facebook group to create several versions of some fundamental document which one person writes, and then others can then read it and can formulate a different version of the document, and then the document might change depending on how far you take it. So that's something you could include. Yeah. Alex?
What you just described sounds a bit like a wiki.
Yeah, I guess kind of. But what we could be make it more interesting though is that we could also really include it in the kind of Zoom talk, so that you could read something from it and use that as a point of departure for the Zoom talk. I mean, there's many ways you could go about it, but generally it's interesting, this area of the relationship between the spoken word and the written word, and whether those could inform one another. It's another way that one could perhaps bring even more, more structure into it, or maybe more randomness into it, depending on where you see it from, or at least more energy into the process. Yeah. I don't really know where I'm going with this, but
I think Alex is either pointing at Tammy or me.
That was you. You were first.
Okay, here's the thing I like about what you said about writing, Glenn, and that is, to me, one of the most exciting things we can produce out of what we're creating here with all of our collective imagination is imagine that we all together collaborate on writing, in a sense, a science fiction book about a society that doesn't exist yet. It's a society that's got new practices, new mechanisms, new values, new ways of being, new ways of interacting, new ways of loving, new ways of business, new ways of production, new ways of transportation. Let's write that science fiction story. Because when I started doing stuff called systems engineering, way back 20, 30 years ago, there was a document that in business I've never seen the equivalent of, unless it's called a business plan, but that's so boring. It was something called an operations concept. And the operations concept for a system you're building is that science fiction story of the world that would be if we built this thing. What people do, how would they act, what would be different, what would be the same, what would go away, what would be new, all those sort of things. And it's the most fun of systems building and creation because you get to use your imagination. If it's boring, it's because you didn't think of it.
So how do we start doing that?
Let's write little vignettes. The way we did this was a day in the life of. Okay, so we imagine the kinds of people that the system would affect. Now, obviously, if we're creating the new world, it affects everybody. But let's start on a smaller scale. Okay, let's say first is among us. What are we? We're change builders, maybe, or we're Tai Chi practitioners, or we're yogis, or we're doctors, or we're software engineers, right? So in the life of this role, and I'm going to pick myself as, let's say, an internet entrepreneur, okay, in my life. What do I do now? Today, without this thing, without the new world, okay, then scenario B is, what would my world look like if I had this thing that we're about to build? How would I talk to people differently? How would I think about the system I'm building differently? How would I manipulate the ideas visually differently? How would I just describe my day in the life of Sam, both pre-system and then post-system, and use that as an imagination exercise? And then we go to Tammy, okay? Tammy, board member of a credit union, pre-system.
Not anymore.
Post-system, here's how Tammy would do that job, okay, if she were still in that job, okay? Or Glenn, in the example of visionary, pre-system, visionary, post them? How would you write? How would you get those memes out of these media that you're reading? How would you then write up these essays that you are writing up? So anyway, that's one way you would start. And if you collect all these in-a-life vignettes and scenarios, and you pack them all together, and then you look for common threads, and you say, well, this has to be true, then that has to be true for that other person. You know, you look for dependencies and interrelationships. That would be the first couple of steps that I would think might be applicable. Okay.
That sounds like fun.
It is fun.
Yeah.
When I used to build systems, you know, this is the funnest part of systems building.
Okay, so how do we lob that out into the group? Let's do that. Let's do that this week.
Okay.
Let's do it. I mean, you don't have to,
I've already experienced the power of deep learning, machine learning with Google, because they've been monitoring my web activity, the links I click on, all the ads I click on, the pages I visit, and the comments I leave in posts. They're all read and analysed, and I find the ads they're delivering as content on my Google sites and my YouTube channel are directed directly at my interests and the things I care about. And it's quite good.
Yeah, I love this idea. It's so interesting. What you just mentioned there, Sam, it's more or less word by word an idea which I call stories from possible worlds, and it's one of those one of the really central things that came to me, it's a very simple model. I mean, it's just that you create a story, a narrative of what a possible future would be like. And the narrative can begin now. Maybe you'll include a narrative of your past up until now, but then you can write the future as you go on. And this is similar to the work of which Jordan Peterson did, called the Future Authoring Program, which apparently turned out to be an effective way to change improve the results of students, where they wrote a story about their past and their present and the future they would want. But this would be doing it on a collective scale, which might be a lot more fun and a lot more interesting. And really, it's just what Deborah has been talking about too, this science fiction story, about a possible future. And it's very, very interesting. I mean, because maybe that really is the center of the mandala. Because if we can create a story about a possible future that we could go into, then we are already creating that pattern in our minds, and we might be already creating that future. So maybe this is actually the secret. Maybe this is the path. Maybe this is the critical path, that Tammy's been talking about. I made this card here, the critical path.
I love it. That's awesome.
I feel this is very close to the critical path. What we're talking about here, to actually author a possible future and formulate it amongst ourselves and work on that.
Yeah, when I was thinking about this, obviously Deborah, or Bibi as she now is known, comes to mind, right? She's a writer. She can help us structure this. She can help us organize this. But, years ago, when I'm a fan of this particular science fiction series that almost nobody's ever heard of called The Lensman. But I thought, wow, wouldn't it be cool if that entire 7-book series was turned into a series of movies? So I thought about co-creating a script in the open source to create those movies, scenes and scripts. So I actually set up a wiki to try and invite people to say, hey, help me do the character development, the timeline development, the scene development, the camera angles you'd want to do to show certain things. How would you describe certain scenes as they unfold? I think that art has a huge role to play in this. It conveys quickly. You know, who was it that said, what is it? Intelligent people make smart ideas sound complex, but artists take complex ideas and make them simple. And if we can do that, and we can invite artists to participate this way, as well as systems builder to actually help make this thing real, then we can see how we can help each other. I think try and figure out, how we build this collective story and how we build this collective novel or novella or operations concept. That's a good place to go in our next conversation, I think, or even the rest of this conversation.
Yeah, I like it.
I'll describe one more story, okay? Back in 2008 and 2009, I, along with 7 other people who all were members of this community of practice called the VPs of Engineering, or CTOs, we wrote a book. Basically, the book was How to Be a VP of Engineering in Silicon Valley. That's not the name of the book, but that was the role that that book was trying to play. So every Tuesday night, we had a call from 8 o'clock to about 8:30 or 9 o'clock. And every week, we would all get on this call. And instead of saying, okay, here's the topic structure, and here's the chapter structure, and you go write chapter 1, you go write chapter 2, you go write chapter. Instead of that, I proposed a format where we each got together and all of us talked about chapter 1 or topic 1 and made some collective decisions about what we believed and what we agreed on and disagreed on. And then most importantly, collected vignettes from our own experience. So we include those little stories in that chapter to illustrate the points we're making. So every Tuesday we would do this for about 2 years. So there were probably about 100 of these meetings. And at the end of this process, we had a lot of content that then went through a lot of editing. And now we have a book that was published in 2008 or 2009. And it's, my first contribution into authorship. But I thought that was a group co-writing and co-creation process that I thought worked reasonably well, other than the fact that, it was, we were a lot of busy people. So carving out 1 hour, each Tuesday was a deep commitment. And not all of us made every single one, but enough of it was done so that it actually happened. So I'm wondering what kind of structure we might want to have for this kind of a creation, where maybe I talk about, I don't know, let's bring up a topic. How do we instill a sense of wonder in each of us? Maybe that's a theme. Or somebody else talks about what does love in this society really mean? Or somebody else talks about
the quantum fluctuation.
Okay. Right. That'll be another big discussion. But anyway, I'm just wondering how we can actually collectively discuss some of these topics, or whether we just want to start by saying, hey, I think this would be really cool. Let me write it up and then let's offer it to the team and everybody else gets to review it. I'm not yet clear on that, but I just think that if there's energy behind co-creating this story, this narrative, this operations concept, this science fiction book, I think that's pretty, that would be exciting to co-create together.
So I'm excited about this. I think this is a really good transition or transformation or evolvement. And I wonder, sorry, I had 3 things that were vying for my brain as you were talking. I think that we have a weekly format for barn raising, and if this is what you want to transform barn raising in, it makes sense to me that here we are with our time set. I like the idea of considering the different sessions and how the different sessions feed into each other. So, maybe Friday's session does kind of follow from some barn raising the previous week and then helps to set barn raising up to do something else. So that would be cool to kind of coordinate there.
I like it. And maybe Sundays we talk about what happened Friday and Saturday and what didn't.
Well, that way we're playing it forward, working out loud.
Exactly.
And then Thursdays is a way to collect the areas that we haven't actually put into the mix yet. And so that's a way to seed more imaginative consideration.
The
So
Thursday
we now see the
conversation.
conversations, actually interrelating a bit tighter.
Yeah, the Thursday conversations have they've developed a lot of them in their own way in a very interesting direction where we got into some really deep existential questions, and that's been very interesting. But
Glenn, I really love that. So pardon me. If we were to take that particular statement from Thursday and say, what could you extract from that conversation that you would think would be exciting to put in this science fiction story? What might that look like?
well, it might look like once upon a time there was a few people in a world similar to this world, one of the possible worlds, who began talking together and they began to explore certain questions, and this and that came up, and once someone said this, and then that led to that, and then the whole scenario can be framed from that. Uh, uh, so there's no limits to how far we can go with the stories from possible worlds idea. Yeah. Well, it's,
So, pardon me, Glenn, but that to me sounds like a recap of what happened on Thursday. If I'm trying to ask my question differently, I'm asking what topic was brought up on Thursday that affected the future in such a way that it would be exciting to write about? That's a different way to ask the question.
yeah. Okay, but to just mention this writing about. We had one Friday session, me and Tammy and Harry, where we described, where we just said kind of one sentence at a time, and we described the world that we would like to live in the future. And then we just went kind of quickly around that, and a lot of things came up. It was just about an hour session, but I think that was a good example of how we co-authored this future together in a Zoom call. And one of the things we did was that we spoke in present time to describe what happens. So say this happens, it's like this, it's like that, we experience it like this. These are the scenarios, and quite vivid description, like from a first-person perspective. And I mean, we can do a lot more with those kinds of things in any Zoom call, certainly bar meeting, certainly on Fridays, wherever. And but then what could be really interesting is if it could also be written down, and perhaps because one very simple model that we could have for writing this science fiction story about the possible future is just to keep this project going on for a while and to feed into it and have it as a theme in some conversations, possibly as a theme in the Facebook post, and then many people have the opportunity to describe scenarios which they could see in this future world which we would like to experience. And so the purely style of language would be quite simple. It would just be a description of a scenario where you can see yourself in that scenario and try to make it vivid, and maybe include the subjective experiences that you have in that scenario. So I mean, it's a very interesting thing, because this would actually be something which is somewhere between fiction and reality. It's actually right in the middle, because it's fiction, but it's fiction about a possible reality which is meant to inform reality and move it in that direction. So it's a very interesting mixture of fantasy and reality. So I call it stories from possible worlds. I find that to be, because it's, the stories from possible worlds are in this world, but they have power to perhaps move something. And if we feed into it and if we elaborate the story, it can become even more powerful.
It's funny, you mentioned that storytelling and science fiction movie. The idea I had was quite good, but when I tried to contact Peter Jackson and David Cameron, they were busy working on their own projects and weren't available. So it didn't get up, but it was a good story.
Yeah, was
Could
it
we
something
write it?
similar to this?
It was when I was about 30, I did a correspondence course on screenplay writing, and it was teaching me how to lay it out on the pages and the scenes, the acts, the cast, and the characters, and how to lay out, the way it was structured before you submit it to a publisher or a production studio. And that got me going on the idea of writing a screenplay for a movie. And it sat in the back of my mind for years and years and years, doing nothing, until Avatar came out and made so much money. I saw how much money Avatar made, and it made something clicked in my mind, and thought, well, there's a story about an advanced civilization that was hit by a comet when they were looking for other civilizations, and we found a bit of the debris when we were cleaning up our space junk in the space shuttle. But a journalist discovered the photographic evidence and tried to interview the astronauts, but they rushed away with this piece of debris from an advanced civilization. They decoded the messages they could on them, and they found quantum computing, shit like that, and terabytes of data and information about a civilization similar to ours in technology, but advanced, quite advanced, and what happened to them and why they were looking for other civilizations. It turns out they went through the same situation we're going through on Earth with global warming. That they found an answer, they found a solution. All they did was put up graphene mirrors and reflect some of the sunlight. It allowed them it gave them time to cope with the CO2 increase and allowed the temperature and the climate to come back to normal.
Yeah, those are the kind of stories you can really put in. Like, it was just like for us, but they tried this to make these small differences. It feels really real, but it's also like everything's possible. Yeah, Sam, you had something.
Yeah, Sam.
I forgot what I was about to say.
Okay, I've got something. I'm excited about this whole writing of a script. I've had this line in my mind. You need to flip the script, right? So, and we do. And I think that there's power in words. There's power in story. I mean, some of the highest hopes that I have for this space is to demonstrate a transformation by living it, and really in the present moment write a new script. And so yeah, I'm really excited about this direction that we're taking, because I think that then we have an opportunity to kind of creatively create anyway, we have to co-create together the potentiality and let them sit together. And I like that, like, where are the interdependencies and the relationships and all of that? So it's kind of doing what we need to do, but in a simple little project frame. So I'm stoked about that. I think that that's going to help us. Now, here's my question. And I'll bring this also from Luna, because I go to a class every week, and we have these weekly check-ins, and she suggested that we do more work in between sessions, essentially, and that we come to our share not with like yunks of blah 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 informing others, but rather come really clearly prepared to roll up the sleeves and work. So that means doing what we said we would do, and so we need a place to know where that is. So the knowledge repository of tasks and that sort of thing. And so that, yeah, when we arrive, we're ready to work. And we have bites of work that we're planning on doing that makes sense. You know, I mean, it can move according to what is needed, but we need to have, you know, some grounding purpose for that specific time, and then follow that flow. Obviously, that's gonna be an emergent part, but I think like some pin in the sand.
Let's come up with a name for this. Is this the book? Is this the script? Is this the vision? Is this the science fiction? Is this the story? Is it the narrative? Is it?
It's the quantum fluctuation event.
Great, and I'll break that down into the alphabet code, and we'll have people like really, you know, uncertain of what the hell we mean. The singularity. This I don't know. Anyway,
I would call stories from possible worlds, because it's stories that we create inside of this world about the worlds that are possible for us to move onward. But
Back to the Future.
I like that. Possible.
Yeah, stories of, of or from.
Well, you could say both, I guess. Stories.
Pick one.
I've usually thought of it like stories from possible worlds or stories of possible worlds. I think both were. But the point is that it's possible worlds that
it's not possible. It's real. It just, you know, isn't here yet.
But that's the point. It's real inside of the real world, and when we express it, then it transforms the real world.
From tomorrow. How about stories from tomorrow?
There are real worlds we know about. There are impossible worlds we know about, and there are impossible worlds we don't know about. Where am I going with that one? But we've all got imaginations.
I like stories of possible worlds, because from, for me, means that it already exists, and, you know, I think that a correlation can be made that we all bring our possible worlds, and so there's relativity there, but I think of is more active.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that.
I'll go with that. Stories of possible worlds.
That's a good one. Yeah.
And it's invitational for people too.
I saw a watch for sale, a smartwatch on Amazon, and when I was 14-year-old watching science fiction, that watch was on the wrist of one of the science fiction characters in the movie. So I've lived long enough now to see science fiction becoming reality.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how many of you remember Dick Tracy, but, you know, everybody's got a Dick Tracy watch now in their cell phones.
Yeah.
For example, one thing we could have also, like, if someone writes about this in the Facebook group, we could just have a tag, hashtag for that, stories of possible worlds, where that's this theme of this ongoing narrative that we create about the kind of worlds that are possible. Because then if someone writes one thing, and you just put on that tag, you can actually find it all later. So, because that's probably the easiest way to get some kind of structure in the material in the Facebook group. If we can figure out some hashtags, and along the main themes, so to say. But the stories of possible worlds, I mean, that's a really interesting thing because it touches everything at once through the narrative, and it's something specific that we can write, and it's very fun, and we can just sort of build on it continuously.
Did you see the movie called The Lawnmower Man?
Yeah, long ago. Yeah, I have seen it once.
The Lawnmower Man was interesting because the possibilities with virtual reality, when you put the helmet, cyberspace,
Yeah.
possible virtual reality worlds.
Because when we formulate it in words, possibility, we're actually changing reality. We are. We're creating a new reality within reality.
Totally. And then we get to the alphabet code.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's a way to reframe and tie it all back to purpose. Yeah, talking about the alphabet code, by the way, I made some cards with the letters, and I think that could be a really interesting tool with the alphabet code to just have cards.
Thank you. Yes.
You have something more dynamic. So
definitely. Yeah, that's definitely one of the projects that I'd like to put forward in our group.
Well, I'm feeling really good about what we discussed. I'm also feeling a little bit of pressure to get ready for my guest who's going to come and look at puppies in about an hour. So I'm taking a few notes here. I'm probably going to drop off soon. I'm going to make Tammy host.
I gotta go to. Let's just close.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll just finish.
So my closing is, I'm excited. I'm already starting to work on that document that you created in Google Docs, by the way. I created a channel in Slack called Possible Worlds because it only takes 22 characters, so it wouldn't take stories of possible worlds. And I invited Glenn and Tammy to it. Alex, I'm not sure you're yet part of Slack, but if you join that group, I can make you part of it. And then I'm writing up now a different format for the barn raising, which I'm going to post soon. So those are the things that I'm going to do as a result of this particular call, which I really love, by the way. I love this call.
Me too. Awesome. I'm stoked. This feels like it's actually moving forward in a way that is open, exciting, kind of creative, could be anything, inclusive. Yes. Awesome. 12 out of 10.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Looking forward to yeah, so we'll do this in the talks and writing, so covers just about everything. It's a great way to just get it moving, and a lot of fun.
You know what, Richard Branson, in the book, he wrote a book about his Virgin Airlines fiasco. He said, if you want to be successful, you find out what the people want and the way to give it to them without going broke or going crazy.
Yeah, I think we figured out we want to really make this narrative and really create it and make it lively.
And live it.
And then live it, yeah.
So my challenge to each of us is, how do we do stuff between now and the next barn raising call so we actually move it forward? I will issue that as a challenge to myself, but I'm also asking each of you to think about that, as Tammy was asking.
Yes, that's also, yeah, part of it for sure. I'll do a start of something in that document that we've created.
Yeah.
Yeah. The global collaboration science fiction saga coming up.
Awesome.
Think of it as the mini-series you wish we could see, but doesn't get produced yet.
That's also a good one. Yeah. Well, I'll keep that question in mind. Saturday.
Cool. Thanks,
All
everyone.
right. Thanks, everybody.
You're awesome.
You're all awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.